Let's jump right in. Welcome, everyone. Go ahead and get comfortable because today we are taking a nice, relaxed, slow-paced journey into the heritage and craftsmanship of a true American icon, Maker's Mark. If you've ever walked down a whiskey aisle, you have absolutely seen that dripping red wax. But in this explainer, we're going to dig into the fascinating science, the rich family history, and the brilliant marketing mind that actually put that wax on the bottle. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is how our journey looks today. First, we'll look at an iconic bourbon legacy. Then we'll get into the soft winter wheat, followed by Margie Makes Her Mark, a timeline of craft, and we'll wrap up with the wood finishing series. So, starting off with Section 1, an iconic bourbon legacy, how a red wax seal changed American whiskey. Every great bourbon has a story, right? But very few of them involve a family that completely transformed the entire premium bourbon landscape. So that brings us to the central question for this explainer. How exactly did a dripping red wax seal help revolutionize the American whiskey industry? Well, back in the 1950s, a lot of the bourbon out there was honestly kind of harsh. It had a really hot bite to it. We're going to uncover how the Samuels family actually cured that harshness, both through the incredibly smooth liquid inside the bottle and the totally distinct handcrafted visual branding on the outside. Moving right along to Section 2, the soft winter wheat, Bill Samuels' slaver innovation. This story really kicks off back in 1953, when Bill Samuels Sr. bought the Old Burke's distillery down in Loretto, Kentucky. And in a pretty legendary move, he actually took his family's 170-year-old recipe and ceremoniously set it right on fire. He wanted to build a bourbon from scratch that wouldn't, as he put it, blow his ears off. But to do that, he needed a brand new mash bill, the mix of grains you use to make the whiskey. Now, traditional bourbons usually rely on rye as a secondary grain, which gives it that spicy, peppery, and sometimes bitter bite. Bill didn't have years to distill and age dozens of different recipes just to find a smoother alternative. So he got incredibly creative. He literally baked loaves of bread using different grain combinations. And by tasting that bread, he made the call to swap out the harsh rye completely and replace it with soft, red winter wheat. It's this absolutely crucial swap that gives Maker's Mark its delicate sweetness and that famously gentle finish. But here's the thing. Having the right wheat is really only half the battle. How you process it matters just as much. First, they dry clean the grains, and then they pass them through a roller mill. Now, this is a very specific, incredibly deliberate choice. Most distilleries just use hammer mills to smash up their grain. But that hammer action, it creates friction, and friction creates heat. That heat cooks the grain early and makes it taste bitter. By using a roller mill instead, Maker's Mark gently crushes the wheat, preventing it from heating up. This ensures the grain keeps its sweet, delicate flavor before it ever even hits the mash cooker. And then we have this number right here, 55. That represents 55% alcohol by volume, or 110 proof. That is the remarkably low barrel entry proof for Maker's Mark. When the newly distilled liquid, which distillers call white dog, actually goes into those charred oak barrels to age, it's diluted down to 55% with limestone spring water. This is actually believed to be the lowest barrel entry proof in the entire industry, and it is a really costly choice because it means they literally need more barrels and way more warehouse space to make the same amount of bourbon. But here's the magic. Water dissolves different wood sugars than alcohol does, so having this lower alcohol strength allows the liquid to pull out much more of that sweet, flavorsome vanillin from the toasted oak as it rests. All right, Section 3, Margie Makes Her Mark, the genius behind the red wax. So while Bill Sr. was busy perfecting the taste inside the bottle, his wife Margie Samuels was completely revolutionizing the outside. She was a true marketing visionary, and honestly, she essentially created the premium bourbon category. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is just how totally comprehensive her vision was. See, Margie was an avid collector of fine English pewter, and those pieces always featured a little artisan's maker's mark to guarantee quality. That's exactly where she got the name. Then she designed the SIV logo, S for Samuels and IV for what they considered the fourth generation of commercial distillers in the family, all wrapped inside a star to represent their Star Hill farm. She also chose this really unique squarish bottle shape inspired by 19th century cognac, just so it would immediately stand out on a crowded shelf. She designed the label with a hand-torn, deckled edge, printed on a classic antique press. And, of course, she was the one who absolutely insisted on the dripping red wax seal. Every single one of these elements was designed to visually communicate handmade, high-quality craft before you ever took your first sip.
I absolutely love this quote from their son, Bill Samuels Jr., because it perfectly brings Margie's total determination to life. Margie literally perfected the cascading red drip using a deep fryer right there in their home basement. It's often said that her fried chicken was never really quite the same after she did that, but she fundamentally changed the whiskey business forever. Her vision for the red wax was brilliant. She wanted to make sure that while the whiskey inside tasted perfectly consistent, no two bottles on the outside would ever look exactly alike.
And let me tell you, that wax is serious business. The long tendrils of wax cascading down the neck of every single hand-dipped bottle are a fiercely protected trademark. It's registered trademark 735-26578 to be exact. It's actually a non-traditional position mark trademark, and the courts have upheld it time and time again as a vivid, distinctive identifier of the brand. It is just a fantastic, lasting testament to Margie's enduring brilliance. And because of her immense impact, she was actually the first woman directly tied to a distillery to ever be inducted into the Bourbon Hall of Fame.
Let's look at Section 4, a timeline of craft, the Samuels family legacy. To really grasp their full impact, it helps to see just how methodically this whole brand was built. Back in 1953, the Burke Distillery was purchased. Just 5 years later, in 1958, the very first bottle was hand-dipped in that iconic red wax. Now, through the 1970s, when bourbon as a category was really struggling, Maker's Mark actually kept growing. They ended up sparking a huge premium revival that led to a massive surge in popularity for bourbon in the 1980s. 1985 marked the official registration of that wax trademark, which was also the same year Margie passed away. Then, jumping way ahead to 2010, the brand introduced its first major new product in over 50 years, Maker's 46, which was guided by none other than Bill Samuels Jr.
Which brings us to Section 5, the Wood Finishing Series, honoring the makers of makers. Let's move to and see how this builds into their modern era. The Samuels family has really expanded on that foundation of soft red winter wheat by creating a unique craft bourbon collection. Their recent wood finishing series uses some really innovative oak stave techniques. Essentially, they place custom seared or toasted wood staves right inside fully matured barrels of Maker's Mark to impart bold, complex, entirely new flavors. But what's truly special here is the inspiration behind the series. Every release pays tribute to the specific teams working at Star Hill Farm. For instance, the Heart release honors the distillery team that manages the mills and mash tuns. The Keeper's release celebrates the hardworking warehouse team, the folks who physically hand-rotate those massive, heavy barrels through multi-story rickhouses just to ensure even aging. And the Steward's release honors the operations team overseeing all the quality control and bottling. It's just a really beautiful way to translate the hard, physical work of specific human beings into distinct flavor profiles.
And that brings us to our final thought for today. True character isn't made by machine. It's actually an old joke around the distillery that if they could figure out how to make it any faster, they still wouldn't. Because at Maker's Mark, it really is one bottle at a time, hand-dipped every single time. And honestly, it leaves us with a pretty provocative question. In today's incredibly fast-paced, highly automated world, what is the true value of just slowing down? Of taking the time to use a roller mill so the grain doesn't get hot? Of manually rotating a heavy oak barrel, or hand-dipping a bottle in hot wax just to make sure it's utterly unique. I hope this explainer has given you a much deeper appreciation for the craft, the science, and the wonderful people behind the wax. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you on the next one.